Hey fans, in this episode, we're firing up the Southwick time machine and heading back to 1923 to explore an accident involving an ice train in Rails of Misfortune, a very tragic real-life story that centers around a Connecticut couple. There's also a brief appearance by one of Southwick's most infamous residents, someone diehard fans of the Southwick time machine will instantly recognize. Anyway, let's dive into Rails of Misfortune, the fatal ice train accident in 1923. So here we go. Prominent businessman Thomas P. Temple and his wife left their home in Waterbury, Connecticut on the morning of September 19th, 1923, to head to the Eastern States Exposition, better known today as the Big E, in West Springfield, Massachusetts. Now, Thomas, he was only 39 at the time, and he had a very successful plumbing and sheet metal business. He also owned a popular bowling alley called Lafayette Alleys. Anyway, while driving through Southwick, Massachusetts, Thomas accelerated his luxurious 5-passenger Jordan touring car and passed a Ford approaching the Springfield grade crossing on the Feeding Hill Southwick Highway. Meanwhile, a southbound ice train on the Northampton division of the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad was running about 20 minutes late. The train gave its signal as it approached the Springfield grade crossing. Now, as fans of the Southwick time machine probably know, the Springfield grade crossing was on modern-day Feeding Hills Road. Back then, it was known as the Feeding Hills Southwick Highway, before officially becoming Springfield Road and later Feeding Hills Road as it remains today. Anyway, the train gave its signal and rang its bell. Now, the train, which consists of a tender followed by a locomotive called the Congamond Switcher, was pulling a caboose. The tender was in front of the locomotive switcher instead of in its typical spot behind it. Anyway, the train was traveling faster than usual in order to make up for lost time. Upon noticing the train, Thomas braked hard. A member of the train's 3-man crew saw that the car was not stopping and applied the emergency brake, but it was too late. The train's tender slammed into the classy automobile and carried about 100 feet before ejecting both occupants. The Jordan's powerful Continental engine got caught beneath the tender, causing it to derail at about 225 feet as the locomotive continued pushing it down the railroad track before it too likely derailed. The impact scattered parts and debris along more than 300 feet of railroad track, with most of the Jordan reduced to a ball of twisted metal lodged under the caboose. Thomas's body landed on top of one of the Jordan's doors on the side of the railroad track. Mrs. Temple landed about 3 feet away from her husband's body in a patch of brambles. The impact was so hard that nearly all of her clothes were torn off. When the train finally stopped, roughly 350 feet from the grade crossing, the crew rushed over to the bodies where a couple of passing motorists, one who happened to be a friend of the Temples, had already gathered to check for survivors. It was easy to assume that Thomas was dead, for he lay motionless with his head crushed in. Mrs. Temple was a different story, as her almost nude body, covered in brambles, lay pretty still. They saw that her head was fractured, but upon closer inspection, the crew realized that she was breathing, although barely. Southwick physician Dr. Carr, now fans of the Southwick time machine will recognize that name as Southwick's notoriously corrupt doctor, as he's appeared on the Southwick time machine before. But that's the story for another time. Anyway, Dr. Carr here arrived minutes later after the collision, but there was nothing he could do for Miss Temple. She had taken her last breath. When later asked to offer his opinion on who died first, Dr. Carr said that Mrs. Temple's body was warm, unlike Thomas's, which was cold. Authorities had the bodies removed to the undertaking rooms of Hearn and Company furniture store in neighboring Westfield. At the time, it was common for furniture stores to double as undertakers, with the undertaking rooms usually located in the store's basement. Anyways, at the Hearn furniture store, the bodies were examined by the medical examiner, who determined that Thomas likely died on impact. In addition to their fractured skulls, the medical examiner said that both victims had a broken leg. Thomas also had a fractured arm. Authorities noted that Mrs. Temple's wristwatch was not broken, but had stopped at precisely 10:45. The medical examiner released the bodies to the family, who held a double funeral service. Now, it's interesting to note that the governor of Connecticut and the mayor of Waterbury attended the Temple's funeral. Anyway, when settling the estates of Mr. and Mrs. Temple, a brother of each of the deceased represented their respective siblings, with the Merchants Trust Company of Hartford, Connecticut becoming administrators of both estates. Because the Temples had no children, the question of who died first arose. If Miss Temple died first, her estate would be combined with Thomas's and they go to his heirs. If Thomas died first, his estate would be combined with his wife's and they go to her heirs. An inquest into the horrific accident was required. At its conclusion, a Westfield District Court judge filed his findings in Superior Court on October 19th. In his report, the judge cleared the railroad of any wrongdoing, solely blaming Thomas's carelessness for the accident, saying he failed to stop, look, and listen at the grade crossing. He also noted that Thomas was traveling too fast. In the case of Mrs. Temple, the judge found that Thomas's gross carelessness was the cause of her death. And although the railroad was free from blame, the judge said it would serve the safety of the greater public to have some of the shrubbery growing along the highway near the Springfield grade crossing removed. In the judge's opinion, Thomas died first, so his estate would go to his wife, then both estates would pass on to her siblings in event of no will. Thomas's heirs filed lawsuits contesting that he died first. The matter was settled out of court on May 21st, 1924, with 9 heirs of Mr. and Mrs. Temple agreeing to split the estates jointly, estimated about $10,000. It's interesting to note that in a pure coincidental move, the Georgia Motor Car Company started using hydraulic front wheel brakes that same year. Now, the ice train accident was not Thomas's first run-in with death. On the morning of December 30th, 1914, an 8-year-old boy was knocked unconscious after sliding down Lincoln Avenue, a side street in Torrington, Connecticut, and striking the rear wheel of Thomas Temple's car as it traveled down South Main Street. The chain on the tire cut and fractured the child's skull. He died about 24 hours later on New Year's Eve. Immediately following the accident, Thomas reported to the medical examiner and the local police. That afternoon, police arrested Thomas on a technical charge of reckless driving, and on January 7th, authorities in Connecticut suspended his driver's license. However, the Secretary of State returned Thomas's license to him on January 27th after finding him not guilty, thanks to witness accounts that the accident was unavoidable. You can read Rails and Misfortune, the fatal ice train accident in 1923 on the Southwick Time Machine at www.southwicktimemachine.com. The complete story is there, as are any edited out portions and additional research notes. If you like the story, drop a comment below and click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel because you never know where the Southwick Time Machine will take you next. Stay tuned for more historical curiosities as we continue our mission of preserving history through storytelling. Until next time, thank you for watching.